Okay. So one of the things we haven't gotten to, and one of the things that's required for this feature to go beta, is end-to-end tests. We need a framework for cloud providers such as OpenStack or Rackspace or Amazon to submit the results of end-to-end tests run against their CCM back to Kubernetes core. So Jago is going to get us the infrastructure, or he's actually gotten it approved by CNCF to get the dashboard. Like, we're going to get a dashboard from CNCF that can get requests, or that can get results from posted by cloud providers such as Amazon or Rackspace or whatever. Yeah. So we need someone to actually add the code in Kubernetes core and configure the dashboard to inform the cloud provider that a change relevant to CCM has been made. Say, if a change in a certain folder happens, it should trigger a test in the cloud providers, and then cloud providers infrastructure, and then the result should be posted back to Kubernetes.
Yeah. So I know that. So a few weeks ago, at the OpenStack PTG, Dims demonstrated some work that he was doing, where he's taking. I think it's a single node. I think it's a single node Kubernetes installation, and he's running a gate job against it, and so he stands it up. And he was using that as a model for, okay, now that this like very small Kubernetes installation is up and running and it's being used in gate jobs, it's then not too much of a stretch to enable the cloud provider on top of that and then start running the tests. So for a model of running end-to-end tests that exists, and that's something that we're actively working on. There's also the CNCF CI/CD work, which is also running against a number of different cloud providers, and I think that they're doing the end-to-end tests and providing the dashboard too. And so we have two models in place that do the testing. So I think in some ways it's maybe a matter of communicating that and enabling it upstream.
Enabling it upstream is what's required.
Yeah.
So I'm actually not following that. What's going on with that? If anyone knows what's the status of it and how we can actually take it upstream, that's something we should talk about right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I'm going to be working on from the OpenStack cloud provider perspective.
Okay.
I don't entirely understand the scope of the work that needs to be done, but it's something that I can kind of add to my list of things to look into. While I'm working on it on the OpenStack provider side, I can share that information back to the rest of the cloud providers.
That would be very helpful. I think my internet just went out for a second. That would be very helpful. Yeah, Chris, thank you. So we have Khalid here and Anoop here, both of whom are actually working on features right now. Is there anything you'd like to discuss?
I have no updates on my side. Didn't get around to do the PR for route controller yet. It should be soon though.
Okay.
So yeah, I actually changed some code to remove external ID, and right now what I also realized is external ID is being used in kubelet types file, and in that node spec structure we don't have instance ID, and that external ID is being used in node status. So I'm figuring out what can be replaced.
Okay.
because jobs are failing due to that right now. So yeah, maybe I can try to add instance ID in that node spec thing and see. Or I'm still looking at the files. What can be done there?
Okay. Do you have any possible avenues to go forward with, or is there
Uh,
anything?
I mean, I'm going to check the code to if that node status can use instance ID there, because external ID and instance ID basically provide the provider ID. Uh, so I'm just trying to use that. If it doesn't work, then I will kind of hover over the channel and see.
Okay, so it's used for identifying the node. That's what you're saying.
Yes,
Okay, and
because it is used when we register a node with kubelet. It checks whether that node is already registered or not using external ID right now.
got it.
So there, instead of external ID, I'm going to see if instance ID can be used. So yeah.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, if it can be used, do make the change
Okay.
in the PR, and
Okay.
we'll
Yeah.
see how it goes from there.
Okay. Yeah. Sure.
So I just remembered Andrew from DigitalOcean was also helping with end-to-end tests a while back. And Andrew, if you have a few cycles to contribute, we would appreciate your help here. I don't know what it looks like for you at this point.
Yeah, so I was last time I was here. I was paired up with someone else to work on it, and then we never I think the holidays hit, and then we just never followed up afterwards.
Right. I mean, it happens. It's okay.
Were you paired up with Mithra?
No, that was with Daniel from SAP.
But yeah,
So
one of the big the big problems is I don't really. There's not really a clear understanding of what infrastructure is available to do all those things. So
yeah, we'll need a good communication channel with Jago or Walter. If you can help us really understand how to start using the infrastructure from CNCF, that would be great.
Okay. I'll try and help. I'll also try to make sure Mithra gets involved in this because she's the one supposed to be on the hook for it.
Okay. She's from Google, right?
Yeah. Part of our test infra team.
Okay.
Yeah, happy to jump into whenever we have all those things in place. I also did want to follow up with one more feature. And sorry if we talked about this in another meeting, but did we ever address the TLS bootstrapping issue with Kubelet?
I don't think so. I remember that issue. It's
because that was a beta blocking feature too, right?
Was it a beta blocking feature though?
I mean, I don't know, maybe it wasn't. That's what I recall though.
Do we have a bug for that?
Yeah, I'm
somewhere.
Sure. Somewhere in there.
Yeah, from long back.
It's right now.
6-7 months back. One sec, I'm just taking down notes. But in the meantime, Andrew, can you go over what the bug was again? During the startup of Kubelet, there was an issue because we couldn't really create TLS certs for it.
Yeah, so the problem is that the TLS bootstrapping feature assumes that it can query the cloud provider information for the external and internal IPs and its host name. And it uses those TLS certs to actually talk to the API server. And so we created sort of like a chicken and egg problem because if you set cloud provider external, it waits for the cloud controller manager to set.
Mm-hmm. Now I remember. Sorry, go ahead. Sorry, my internet is bad, and I think I thought you finished talking. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Right. No, all I was going to say was that we're essentially registering the server, the kubelet, without those fields.
Mm-hmm.
And we need those fields to set the TLS cert.
So Rob from Red Hat, Rob Ratai, from Red Hat actually fixed this issue. If I remember correctly, I'm looking for the commit, but yeah, he fixed it about November or so. I'm going to get back in touch with him and find out if that actually happened.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yeah, but yeah, he did this thing where I think he added a module in. He added a new controller for it, I think. Yeah, I need to look at it again.
Okay, yeah. So I remember the biggest issue was that we had to reverse the data flow from the kubelet to the API server. But yeah, I'll follow up with you after on that.
Okay, yeah, let's do that. Thank you for bringing it up. All right, so we have a bunch of things that we need to get to. One is there's no label to tag the cloud provider working group when an issue shows up. So even if we tag it as area cloud provider, we don't get notified. Walter, would you know how to get set up with a label?
Off the top of my head, no, but I'm just grabbing a sticky. I will take that item. I know who to talk to about getting that done.
Thank you.
Jace Dumars might know.
He might. The other. I was thinking if this is CNCF, I can certainly go talk to Phil Whitrock.
Okay. Yeah, it might be CNCF.
Yeah. So I'll either talk to Phil or I'll talk to Caleb, but one of them can probably get that to happen for us. So we just need a cloud provider working group tag.
Yeah, a tag where people should be able to tag us, and we should get notifications. The working group should get a notification or something.
Got it.
That'll be great. Yeah, that was one of the things. Last week we spoke about a few things, Walter. Do you have any updates on the communication channel that we kind of talked about to be able to talk to dissuade information to the various cloud providers if needed?
I don't. I mean, we discussed getting owners for each of them, but that's as far as it's gotten. I was hoping Caleb would be here. Mm-hmm. I had asked Caleb to take a look at that.
Okay. I'll get in touch with Caleb, find out what to do about that.
But yeah, it sounds like at minimum, we'd like to make sure we have an identified owner and then an email list that would go to all the owners.
Right.
Yep.
And I guess and we should also have an onboarding process for people to kind of subscribe to that, I guess. Maybe just a Google group. I don't know.
Yep. Yeah. Makes sense.
Okay. Other than that, we talked about, last week we talked about having, maintaining docs for each of the providers and, having a common link to kind of access each of these docs. Do we have any updates on that?
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, anyone?
Well, I was about to say I missed the SIG Docs meeting this week, so
okay.
I don't have an update for it.
Okay, that's okay. Walter, I know you were going to maintain it for Google, so.
Yeah, I mean, my basic thought had been that I was waiting for the repos, mm-hmm. and then I would start putting all that the Google-specific documentation into that repo. I do know there is a central page out there that has, I think, AWS and
OpenStack's on it too.
OpenStack, and needs everyone else to fill in. My site has been extremely hectic, so even though it's on my plate, I haven't had a chance to fill that in for Google.
Okay, it's fine. That's understandable. Andrew, would you be taking over DigitalOcean's?
Yeah, I can do that. So this is a central doc that we have in the web repo.
It's a link. The central doc just has a link to your actual doc.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Can you guys post the link on the chat so I can take a look at that?
Yeah, definitely.
I don't have it with me right now. If someone else does, please post it.
Or we can leave it in the workgroup channel later.
Are you talking about the Kubernetes provider documentation?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I think if there's any other issues people want to bring up, it's a good time to bring it up now.
So very preliminary, but I had a chat with some of the Kubernetes installer guys yesterday, and they had two concerns having to do with the cloud provider. One was the idea of, hey, it might be nice if you could have a central installer once everyone has broken out all of their stuff into individual cloud providers, where you could still run it centrally and it would be smart enough to go to the repo. So if you said like, oh, I want to install Azure, it would be smart enough to know from the Kubernetes core how to go and fetch what it needed to be able to install, grab the Azure scripts and run them. So I'm supposed to have another meeting with them today, but part of the feedback I gave to them was it's a great kind of goal, but I think we need to talk about that one a little more generally. And then related to this, for testing purposes, they wanted to be able to do something similar where they wanted to be able to say, I want to run AWS E2E tests, and it would know how to, from the central system, allocate nodes in AWS, which sort of suggests we may have ongoing cloud provider needs, even once we've broken stuff out. I'd like to kind of solidify what the requirements actually are and then bring them back for us to talk about. But I figured it was at least worth mentioning to get more brains involved.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because with that issue for all of the other cloud providers, there's one, it's basically one endpoint that people can go to and have like the definitive AWS experience or the definitive Google experience. Sadly, there's no definitive OpenStack experience. So that would, so there's an issue of, providing additional information about, what clouds you access and what capabilities are available.
Another question with regards to that, when we talk cloud, do we really refer to run it yourself on the cloud or manage clusters a la Fargate or GKE or AKS? When we talk about this, what do we really mean?
I believe we mean both. So, so certainly from Google's perspective, we mean both what we call GCE and GKE, right, one of which is managed and one of which is not.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, and on the OpenStack side, that would be, we have the cloud provider, so that would be a generic OpenStack cloud, but we also have Magnum, which is an API to deploy managed Kubernetes infrastructures, and it depends upon the cloud provider.
So Amazon's representative is on vacation, and he's going to be joining us from next week. I'm sure they have a similar mechanism too, though I wouldn't know. Khalid, are you from Amazon?
No, I'm Microsoft.
Okay.
So from my side, I can go and check how we can integrate with this environment. It certainly adds. I'm always thinking it's good for the user to see all the experiences in one place, run them in one place, and get results and all of that stuff. So I think we should be able to integrate with this. I don't have details on what's being built, so I'll have to go and look. All right. So give me some time to learn what's happening. All right.
Definitely. So Walter, one quick question. This kind of centralized mechanism, you said the Kube installer guys, are you talking about COPS or KubeADM or something?
It's actually a really good question. I'm meeting with them later today, and I've never met them before. So, like I said, I want to start by getting the requirements, but the sort of synopsis they gave me was the idea of having a one place they can point the customer to set up their cluster and just take a flag saying where they want to set their cluster up with that one place. The grander goal was even once we start being able to do Kubernetes across cloud providers, was even being able to make it bright enough to be able to say, I want to run 40% of my cluster on Google and 60% of my cluster on AWS, and have it do the right thing in a managed sort of from a central place, rather than you having to, do it from two places, which
Got it.
that sounds nice. And it sort of explains one reason why you might kind of have to be able to do it from a central place.
Yeah. So co-ops and Kuberium already do that. So I'm just wondering who it is, what the concern is. So do let us know.
Next time I'll be able to tell you.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. I think that's it for today. Unless someone
I actually had one issue that I wanted to bring up also.
please.
So last week we merged this patch. I'll drop it into the chat here so that everyone can see it, which was essentially creating Kubernetes upstream repositories for all of the cloud providers. OpenStack is actually ready. We have code ready to move into a new repository. We're actively looking for a new home because right now it's in Dims is hosting it in his personal GitHub, and he would like to not be the central gate on that, and instead have it be a more community managed effort. And so so I was looking for direction from the working group on how we want to move forward with that. Like I would like to create the repository as soon as possible, but I would like to do it in a way that has a naming convention that's agreed upon by the other cloud providers, so that as other providers are creating, their Kubernetes hosted repositories, that we have a consistent naming convention, so that so that we can do some of these automation tasks, and so that users have a consistent experience. So I don't know. I mean, so from my point of view, since we kind of have an urgency to do this, I'm looking for a decision sooner rather than later. But I just didn't want to go off and make a decision and then have it be the wrong decision and have to involve infrastructure people and all of the other cloud providers and our community, and making another migration.
Yeah, I brought this up last time about creating the incubator repos, and then Jago said that he was going to look into it. But then I think we just again, the holidays hit and we all just forgot about it.
Yeah. So is there consensus on the naming? Is there naming that I should be using, and should I just be pinging Jago about it and say, hey, we're ready to do this, and see if I can move that forward? Like, what's your suggestion?
So I can certainly talk to Jago this afternoon. But I think I will tell you, when working with Jago, he has, I think I have a lot of stuff on my plate, and he's got at least twice as much.
Yeah.
So the best thing to do with Jago is for us to come up with a proposal, and then he'll probably just say, sounds good, and make it happen.
Yeah.
So I would say, let's just come up with a proposal now.
Okay.
My suggestion would either be just the name of OpenStack, or maybe CP-OpenStack if we wanted to indicate that this is about cloud provider.
Yeah. So on the files that were provided, there were actually a number of different repositories that were named. One was the one convention was cloud provider cloud provider the name of the provider. The other was I thought I saw multiple instances. Actually, I think that's just the only name.
I think it largely depends on, are we going to have a cloud provider org, or is this just separate repos in the Kubernetes incubator org? Or because if it's a cloud provider org, we don't really need to add the cloud provider next to it, right?
Right. So in the chat, I'll post an example of what that patch has in the chat. It's Kubernetes cloud provider AWS, and it has an asterisk.
Can I also add just something to think about when we think about the cloud provider? Most of the cloud provider, when we talk cloud provider, we mean /package /cloud provider /name of the provider.
Yeah.
But the cloud provider is actually now with the KMS stuff, and there's also the certificate controller. There's a bunch of projects that come together, not to bring up experience. just a bunch of components that people use in order to run correctly on a cloud provider.
Right.
These
Yeah, I mean,
sorry?
I was going to say, I'm not sure if it's exactly what you're saying, Khaled, but I would support that. And that's sort of why I don't like having controller manager, because I think that those repos are going to be a lot more than just the controller manager.
Yeah, that's the situation that we're in right now. Is we provide what's the OSI? We provide an OSI driver for Cinder in that repository. We also have a Fuse driver.
We have plenty of stuff that's Azure. All right, some of them are very specific, and some of them are general purpose. But I'm talking about the specifics ones, like the Fuse driver for the blob storage, the CNI, Azure CNI. We're looking into certain controllers. There is the KMS project. All of these things are needed one way or another for somebody to run a Kubernetes cluster on Azure. Right. And I'm guessing the situation is not very different with regards to the other cloud providers, Amazon and. So now we're in a situation where we're looking at the code that's actually in /package/cloud provider, which is, yes, this is where all the pain right now in terms of merging and testing and all of that, but that's not what everything the user will be looking at.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess if I had a suggestion to start from, if we have this naming convention, which is cloud provider, and then cloud provider dash cloud provider name, so cloud provider dash AWS or cloud provider GCE. I think if we agree upon a shared format, like that the cloud controller manager goes inside of the cloud controller manager directory in that repository, and that the docs goes into the docs directory, so that where there are shared efforts and there's a shared experience, we're consistent across all of the providers, but then there is a freedom to if there are things that are specific for the user experience on that cloud, there's that aren't consistent across clouds, that there's freedom to also have subdirectories in that repository that that also handle those pieces.
And then we end up with the dependency hell, man. It's going to be dependency hell, because each directory might be a different project that needs different dependencies. And then, because think of it this way, most people are well equipped to work on a project in one repo, and that's what they know, right? That's what we do. But then this one project contains different binaries that may have different dependencies and different build procedures, right?
Well, it doesn't have to. Currently, Kubernetes is a monorepo. Walter.
Let's not go there.
I will point out that it is, even though we link stuff in, it's no longer really a monorepo. I mean, you've got staging with the API machinery stuff. So it's being split, but the fact that it used to be a monorepo is causing a huge amount of headache in that split.
Yeah. So I posted something in the chat. Instead of having one repo per cloud provider, let's have some, and then we can host all our projects there. I really don't mind where their projects are. I really don't mind where they are. I'm just
so if I can suggest, I would actually go for the hybrid approach. CNCF is going to give us one repo. If Azure or AWS wants to have additional repos that they use to pull into that repo, I don't think there's a problem with that. But I think there is value in having one defined go-to place. If it then defines other sub-modules and other repos, that's fine. Right. I also kind of like Chris's idea of, if we need, have some sort of naming scheme that we can know where certain things are. So at least have docs and maybe a link for, if we need to do something like a centralized installer that needs a hook, that we have somewhere that is a well-named place in these for that kind of hook. And outside of that, you're free to do what you want.
All right.
Yeah. Where would be the best place to write up a proposal for this that we can talk about and agree upon? Is there a repository that we should send this up to, or is the mailing list appropriate for it? Where? what's I mean, this is a great venue for discussion, but if we want to have larger community discussion.
I would suggest go to Kubernetes community. The cloud provider working group has their own directory under Kubernetes community.
Okay.
Just write a proposal in there, and then we can all collaborate on it.
Okay.
Just to be clear, so there is two parts to this: the management of the code and the user, as in allowing the user to see everything, like one-stop shop, as you said. Somebody said one place, one-stop shop. I don't think I have I personally don't think we have a problem where the code is, or just from a management and user perspective, this is where things get really nasty. Right now, I can, on top of my head, there are 6-7 places, like autoscaler, external DNS, the blob views stuff. All of these things are used by the majority of the users. So I would like them to be like somewhere. Right now, we have them on /Azure/something. But /Azure/X is everything Azure, not just. I would like to have like a thing for Kubernetes somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice if if you go to cloud provider, Azure, and then there's, inside of that there's Cloud Controller Manager, and that's the same for everybody. And how dependencies are managed are left up to the projects themselves. But that as a user, I mean, I'm thinking about the end user and for the developer who's looking for the location of, I want to write generalized code that can do multi-cloud Kubernetes. How do I do that, and where is the tooling I need to enable that?
Right.
Having that consistent experience, even if the implementation details are left up to the providers themselves, I think is valuable. That those conventions become valuable.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, that sounds good. I've just written down the 5 different things people mentioned. One was CCM, other was docs, DNS, CNI, and Flex. In the doc.
Well, I mean, we're also going to have installer. That's certainly, and then all of the specific test codes presumably going to have to go in there as well.
Okay.
If I may share something on my own, that's a personal opinion on installer experience, because the cloud moves too fast for one installer to rule them all kind of scenario. Like if you looked at this thing is moving every day. So this kind of common installer experience end up with either lowest common denominator or an older capabilities. So
I tend to agree, and so in my mind, the best option is probably not we put a central installer in place that can do everything. We put a very thin wrapper in the central place with an agreed upon API on how it can call everyone else's installers, and then everyone else can do the central plus whatever they want to do.
I agree to that, and I think it's a great idea.
But that requires that we have some commonality in where those other installers live and everyone else's.
One big interface with one function that has install.
Yep.
Yeah, I hear you. Man. I hear you. It's always the case with these things. But I think we have an agreement at least with the common wrapper. It can be as simple as wrapping an executable, by the way.
But I like Chris's idea of let's get an initial proposal and then let's have everyone chime in on it.
All right.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, I'm happy to take that since we have urgency on it.
Thank you.
I can send something up maybe even as soon as today or tomorrow morning and for comment. And I'm happy to iterate on it. There's, send up a straw man proposal and then, build something that, the entire cloud provider community agrees upon.
Definitely.
All right.
Please do. Thank you, Chris, and thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Thanks, everyone.
Chris, the link which you posted is actually not working.
Yeah, it's because it's the proposal for where the owner's file is going to live, and so these are future repositories.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks.